knowing how to play instruments, I think very commonly a lot of sort of these teenagers on their laptops will tell you, no, you don't have to learn an instrument.
You sound like a boomer, Alex.
I'll
I'm
tell
just
you.
gonna say I already agree with Alex. I kind of know where Alex is going, and I already I get the vibe.
I'll tell you straight up now, learning how music works is gonna help your compositions like you wouldn't believe.
Hi, I'm Mark.
And I'm Yaku.
And welcome back to Department Spotlight. It's the show where we talk to our friends and colleagues about their experiences in the South African film industry. And today...
We're back!
We're back! I mean, we're still over Zoom with our friends and colleagues, but... we're back!
Today we will be talking about music composing and film scoring with two of our friends and colleagues who have a lot of experience scoring for various different film, TV, advertisements, a lot of different projects. Alex actually scored music for 4 out of our recent short films, so let's get into it.
My name is Dustin. I'm originally from Johannesburg. I'm a composer based in Cape Town, and I work at Pressure Cooker Studios.
What's up, guys? My name is Alex. I am a composer and I am a freelancer. So hit me up if you need any work done.
So, Mark, do you want to kick us off with the questions?
Yeah, so starting off right out the gate, how do you approach a script or project or whatever the project might be? What's the first steps you take?
For me, it's all very... based on the director and your relationship with the director. But for me, it starts off with just getting some sort of as close as possible to like a lock cut, looking through it, and then just getting the vibe from it. And then hearing their references, and then also like the best thing is to like sit down with the director and have like spotting sessions, and then just talk over specific cues, and then just try and see what exactly they want, where they want the music to highlight certain scenes and all that. Yeah, and then from there, it's just about throwing sounds on the wall and seeing what works. So like, generally for me, it's a case of just doing a lot of like underscoring, and then that helps me find like the palette for the score. And then from there, I build themes from there. So I like to find what instrumentation is gonna dictate the mood and the feeling of the general score, and then from there on, I can start finding like memorable like melodies and all that stuff. So that's generally like my process.
Cool.
Yeah,
Alex?
That's pretty cool. I do things a little bit differently. I try to find sort of a theme before I keep going with a specific, depending on the kind of sort of style that the director has taken on. I think you like a lot of the time with some of these sort of, I want to say, more corporate projects that you get on, there'll be someone who's already edited everything to some temp track already, and then it's kind of like, yeah, cool, here's what we thought you would do, so do that. And then on the other end of things, when you get to work with some other directors, it's kind of like, oh yeah, we totally forgot about music completely, like go nuts, you know. And then I don't know. When it's kind of that whole go nuts thing, I prefer focusing on themes of characters, and then from there, sort of taking my theme and putting it through the different worlds of what's going on. It's cool that there's two different ways to get to the same sort of point.
Yeah, I actually didn't even think about that. But yeah, you're actually definitely right. There's a corporate way where the temp tracks there, and I actually. It's less stress-inducing when there actually is a temp track, because then you can kind of get the BPM and the feel, like the tempo that they want. Sometimes I recently did a score for a short, and it was so daunting because I just got an edit and a locked edit, which was fine, but it was just a blank slate, and you don't know like what's the BPM, what's the feel of this short, and it's only after talking to the director. But the cool thing about talking to directors, you get a feel like you kind of feel more creatively like liberated, but you're also like how to explain, you have to try and like manage expectations of like what they want essentially. Like that's kind of like and I think having a temp track, you already have the expectation of what they're looking for, but then when it's blank, you're like, oh man, I don't know if they're gonna like the vibes I'm going with. Yeah, so it's always that.
Just like one more point with the temp tracks thing, like I often sort of get stressed out myself. It's like, oh no, they've done a temp track. Am I gonna get anywhere close to that sort of good, or is it gonna be better, or am I just gonna bomb and they're gonna be like, oh, we're just gonna go with the temp track instead, you know?
Yeah, I've been through that. Yeah, every week. Yeah, there's always that stress. So I relate to that. I think for me, it's like I always have to realize that the directors, they have a different ear than to composers. So for me, I'm in the studio with other composers and they hear all the nuances. Directors kind of have, I feel like from what I've learned from my past year of working in this production house, is that directors have a much more sophisticated ear to music. So they're looking at music in relation to the cue. So they're not actually just hearing, they don't really care about like the actual specifics. They want to see if it works to picture. And I find that if you can sell it and make it work to picture, regardless if your string programming is a little bit simpler, but if it works to picture, then I feel like it's golden. It still works for the cue, you know. Like I think that's what I've learned essentially.
I was watching a it was also one of these kind of podcasts with Spitfire Audio.
I'm a big Spitfire fan as well.
Yeah, and I can't remember who it was or who even brought it up, but they brought up the story of this one director. And this director also happens to be sort of not so much a composer, but good enough at composing, or a musician of some sort. Can't remember the full story, but basically the gist of all of it is this director wrote or did the score to his own film. And at the end of it, a lot of sort of composers looked at the score and thought, oh, well, if I knew that that's what directors meant when they said this all along, I would have not put in so much effort ever.
Yeah. So then leading on to that, sorry, I'm going to steal your question, but
that's cool.
How do you manage a director who doesn't really know music or how to like convey things? I know Alex knows. We worked with Alex in a couple of our short films recently, and how do you navigate a score when the director is not really sure how to phrase things or talk about music?
Because I know also with Alex is Yaku has some sort of musical theory background and I don't have any at all. So I feel like we communicate with Alex differently, but it's still interpreted by Alex. I feel like a lot of composers are incredible like interpreters in terms of taking in language and sort of transposing it into music.
Yeah.
It's like such an incredible talent.
Like the good ones are, I guess the good composers are the best interpreters. I guess that's what the theme is. Yeah, I think for me it's like the reference tracks are like your babies. I think like if you can get them reference tracks and then hear like, so when they say like a lift or a rise, if you can get a reference track that can convey what the intangible is, it can kind of help you like navigate what palettes to use, I think. So yeah, but I feel like there's no golden rule with every client and director. It's just that's like the nature of it. It's just, and that's where the stress and fun comes at the same time. Just trying to decipher what their idea is of like trying to convey all these intangible words into sound. Mm-hmm. That's like the biggest trick.
I think also just to add on to that, it's you kind of, having worked as a composer, you kind of know already, okay, this is what this kind of scene needs to have. And you know, like there's maybe a couple different ways to look at this one scene. All you need is for your director to tell you one keyword, which points in the direction that you need to go in. And I think that's kind of, at least I like to think that's where these really great people are really great at. Like Hans Zimmer, you could probably tell Hans Zimmer like purple, and then he'll be like, yes, I've got you, I've got the theme, I've got like a whole 30-minute theme written in my head.
Yeah,
you know? And that's essentially just like, that's just time. I think the goal is just, the more you compose, the better interpreter you become. I think that's kind of like
yeah, because you hear that story with Interstellar where Christopher Nolan just didn't want to give any reference. He was just like, let's make something new. I don't want it to sound like anything else. And then it's just like, figure it out. So, and I mean, he obviously then the Interstellar soundtrack came out of that, and that thing is amazing.
And it got like a
But-
one-page outline, was it?
Yeah, yeah, of the
Something.
film.
And it was just like, go.
Yeah. Have you guys ever had something like that where the director's like, no, we're gonna do this new thing, or do you prefer there being a reference or them being like, I want to do it on an organ or something like that?
Well, I can tell you from after, at least, that happens quite a lot. It might be a student thing where it's like, oh, we're gonna do this brand new thing that very few people have done before, and then it turns out everyone's done it already. But then as soon as the students kind of realize, oh, that person's done it, then they're like, oh, there's no point in doing that anymore. So I've had quite a few people come up to me used to have when I was more at After, where people come up to you with these ideas of like, yo, let's do this. And then you tell them, oh yeah, exactly like when that person did this on that time in that film. And then they're like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm thinking of a very specific, one of my friends wanted to do sort of, he was spitballing his, what do you call it? Honors thesis thing,
Oh, yeah.
paper. Yeah. Where he was basically coming up with all these different ideas. And every time he came up with an idea, I would start pointing him in directions of like, oh yeah, this guy did that, that guy did that, this person might have written like a whole paper on that. And every time I did that, he kind of was like, oh, well, I thought that was an original idea, and then scrapped the idea entirely. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent.
No, but that's good.
I get you. I mean, it's kind of like that thing of like, the more you know, like there's some expression, I can't believe about it, but it's something about just like the more you know, it maybe just it changes your perception of what the idea of like originality is. So I mean, and I think just to hop on what you're saying, like it all depends on like the intent of the project and like the director itself and your relationship with the director. So I know my boss has a couple of relationships with directors, and with those directors, they always come to him because first of all, they know that he can do the job really well, but also they're friends. So they studied together as well, and then they're able to experiment in that context. But then with other directors, that it's more like, this is a client, we have to impress this person. There is that sense where you have to narrow in your creativity a bit, just to like, if you don't know the relationship yet. So I think the relationship with the director can kind of like, I think with like Hans Zimmer and Christopher Nolan, like there's already a relationship there. So that's how they can like develop. That's why Christopher Nolan can maybe sometimes like be a bit more adventurous in terms of like how he wants to present the score, you know, or how he wants to talk about the score. So I mean, it's all about that relationship that you form, and that sometimes allows you to be more creative, or sometimes it means that you have to be a bit more. You have to do a bit more like trailer music vibes or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a much better answer than mine.
Oh, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's...
Your own was critic. You actually sound like a composer, like your own was critic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I'm sure all of us, everyone in film is their own worst critic to some extent.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's like the more you find out, the less, or the more you know that you don't know anything. The more you know, the less you know. That's what I always feel. Alex, you mentioned film school there for a bit. Do you think it's worth going to film school? Dustin, you didn't go to film school, did you? Or did you?
No, I didn't. No.
So So that's pretty interesting. I think this is the first time we have somebody who didn't and somebody who did. What do you guys think? What's your experience been in the industry going to film school versus not going to film school?
I can say the whole idea of going to film school, it's as far as it goes for developing your art. I think there's a specific look. I didn't do every single major in the film school, so I can only speak from the sort of musical side.
Yeah, that's
of
what we
everything.
want. Yeah.
And it's as far as it goes, going to film school for music, I don't think is like the be all and end all for sort of your art. as far as learning and growing as a musician, yes, you're going to learn like quite a few things, like specific applications of music in film, but you could also have learned those things without having gone to the sort of film school. But where I think film school is the most beneficial is for anyone who is trying to get like a foot in the door, getting to meet all of your friends, like friends that you go and you study with, and then you go and do more things with them afterwards. So sometimes if you're nerdy like me, your lecturers, where my sound lecturer hired me to come and record him for some Foley, you know, so like it's beneficial in terms of getting to know people, but it's also, at the same time, I'm trying to encourage people who want to do film. Don't let not having gone to film school stop you. You know, it's not the be all and end all, but it's beneficial if you are considering going. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with Alex. Like in terms of it's something I'm thinking about as well. Like maybe possibly going back to study in my later years. But I like the idea of like having the sense of community and having people that are in a similar age group as you, and you guys are all experiencing the industry in a very similar way. So for me, that's something like I definitely agree with that. So I wouldn't say you shouldn't go to film school at all. For me, my path was slightly unconventional. So essentially, I started off doing like independent video game work. So I would go on forums, I made a portfolio, and then I just contacted indie developers, and then a couple of projects got me some small paying gigs. And then through that, I just kind of built a portfolio while I was still working. And then essentially, I just built this portfolio, and then my boss just they were looking to go into indie games, and they had done an indie title, and then they were just looking for people like young composers and sound designers that could possibly be on the team to help them like build this side of like the business. And then I just happened to have a portfolio with a couple of titles on Steam, and then they liked it from there. But of course, like the films, I had no experience like film scoring or like working to film. I'd only had experience with music and then coding it into like a game. So then essentially it was just like a learning, like, and then I guess they heard my portfolio and then they could hear that I can compose. But then it's just about tailoring me to the company. So essentially just making sure that I can use the same software so I can like work with everyone else, and then also just learning how to like write cues and all that stuff. And then essentially it's my boss's philosophy is like it's baptism through fire. So essentially he would just give me clients and then just make it work. So it's a lot of that. And then it's a very like crazy like way of like learning, because there's a lot of anxiety that comes with it, because you just like don't know if this is good enough. You're like you don't know if you're doing it right, and then it just like sometimes it comes to like the crazy like end of the week, and sometimes like, oh wow, I learned something through like just doing it. So I think all my philosophy comes from like my bosses, who are like, they believe in the idea of like learning through just doing something. That's kind of like their theory. But I 100% agree with the idea of like going to film school and then like building, because that's something that I really want to do myself, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, I think we've talked to a lot of departments about film school, and everybody sort of says a similar thing. It's like, you don't really need film school, but to just have people that do the thing that you like to do, and then after film school you can just go and do it with those people. That's a very big benefit. So yeah, it's so cool to hear this sort of thing every time, because it's encouraging. It's not like you have to, but it's also not like you shouldn't. So it's very cool.
I think for me, I just got lucky. I think I just really got lucky, and then like I just happened to click with these guys. But I don't think it's like the path is very. I wouldn't advise it. I think just like you never know. How it's gonna end up.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people consider prices for film school a lot, because like film school, I mean, AFTA is extravagantly expensive. And most film schools, I know Open Window is pretty expensive as well. So I think that's probably a main consideration for a lot of people. So it's encouraging to hear that you can make it without film school. That's what I'm getting at.
I wanted to ask, Dustin was speaking about making music for games and then getting into the production company. So one of the things we have here is, what is the different considerations when it comes to score for film versus an advertisement versus a game versus corporate versus sort of how does the thinking change from project to project?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. I know games is one thing that's the fundamental rule is that your composition should be able to loop indefinitely, and that's kind of like the main trick. So usually it's like the games that I usually work in is like iGaming, so it's mainly like gambling games or games like that. And then essentially like the main crux is that the main theme must be 90 seconds and it should loop, and then it should also it should make space in the mix for sound effects. And then so that's like the considerations that I think about. And then other more like narrative-based games are more the compositions are longer, but also they would like it to feel like an endless loop. So maybe the way it fades in, fades out should feel endless, but there's no like it mustn't feel like it shouldn't constantly be going. And then I guess for ads, the hardest ads I feel like are like the 30-second ones, because it's really hard to convey an idea in 30 seconds. Like the best time for me for ads is like a 45-second pitch, because that's like you can kind of get a lot in there with like an idea. And then for like film, like I said, it exists in a very much subjective space. Like regardless if it's corporate or something that's more creative, I feel like you have a lot more room to build a sonic world. I think that's probably like the main differentiating point, is just like the length dictates how much you can maybe like expand musically. So for instance, just like gaming, it's like with the gambling games, there's not much space to really have depth. So you kind of like, if it's a theme, maybe it's like a theme that I've been recently doing. It's like a Maori theme, which is like I've never written Maori Polynesian music before, but it's like, how do I convey that? So it's like you have to have like something that can be like, oh, I'm in New Zealand or whatever. Whereas with like other, maybe if it was like a film about it, you wouldn't necessarily have to rely on those like stereotypical like instruments or like sounds to like convey that. There's a lot more like depth to it. So it's just like the amount of depth that you can put into the project. I think that's what differentiates it.
Yeah, Alex, your experience?
Well, just start with film. I guess film is more about like the story. Is your music helping to tell the story of sort of the whole narrative going on? And also, you mentioned in the video game stuff that it has to make space for sound effects, whereas for film, your music always has to make space for the dialogue. I guess that's kind of, I don't know. It's there's a lot to discuss when it comes to how do you go about doing music for film, and the differences of film and sort of corporate kind of stuff. I think corporate stuff leans more towards the let's be super energetic and happy, where sometimes it gets really tricky because everything is down in the dumps, and now you have to be like, hell yeah, let's do this. I did a project literally as the sort of lockdown hit South Africa as well, and there was one little section where they kind of said, yeah, can we just change that up? It sounds a little doom and gloom. Sounds like the guy that we're talking about is dead. And it's like, oh, yeah, I see what you mean there. And it's a corporate video. It has to be like doots, doots, doots. Like let's get excited about this company.
Yeah.
I've never had the opportunity to do any video game stuff. It sounds really cool to do that kind of stuff.
I think for me, it's like I started off in video games, and then when I got into the company, I kind of got this love for film. So I'm leaning way more into scoring than I'm moving away from games, because I found that like it's the beauty of like just getting an edit and then just putting sound to it is like so awesome. It's like the turnover for like you're able to put down ideas and then immediately see it work. But the problem with games is that you send something over the wall and then you wait a week and then you have to see it in a game and you're like, oh no, you didn't implement it properly. You're like, oh no, this isn't working. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that for me, that's what I love about scoring to film. It's just like the idea that the immediate gratification of like, you can write some music for a cue, take a break, come back, and you can watch it and be like, oh no, this works. Or, oh no, this is terrible. What have I done? Yeah, so that's why I enjoy, by the way.
So can we pivot from that to sort of music theory? Did you guys do theory before you sort of started music professionally, or did you like just do it as you learned theory? You were like, I want to write my own stuff. How was that? How's your relationship with theory?
My relationship with theory is it's decent. I know enough. I don't know. I kind of, my sort of track record, I did music in high school where I got taught music theory. I then went on to study at Wits, doing a BMUS that I never really got around to finishing, where I did more music theory. Then while at after, kind of went on my own sort of tangent of learning theory on my own, because after only goes up to grade 5 with theory. So musically, like, there wasn't that much theory that I could learn. It was more in film theory that I could learn there. Whereas with so basically it was beneficial for me because I got to go and sort of think, oh, okay, what are the theories around doing music for horror, for example, and then really getting to go super deep into that, where the curriculum would say, okay, today we're learning, I don't even know, like we're learning harmonic minor scales. I already had that foundational knowledge, so it's okay, cool. We're supposed to learn that. Let's go learn this instead.
It's interesting to find out up till what level after goes as well for people who are thinking about doing film specifically, but then they already completed their, like, maybe they did their music degree, their BMUS completely, and now they're like, okay, let's do film school. So I think it's good information.
But I think you bring up another point about film school specifically. Like, I don't think you're ragging on film school, because I think they go into, as you say, like, what are the film conventions? What's the film theory? How does the film theory support the musical theory? So I think there is still the benefit of going to film school.
Oh yeah.
If you if you have that sort of musical foundation like you did. Yeah. Anyway, Dustin, what's your?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think 100%. I think like my relationship with theory is very like a love-hate thing. Like, it's really good. I mean, I play guitar, so I'm able to translate the theory into guitars. I can really visualize it. For me, like my perception of music theory has changed since I've been in the industry through my company, and it does help a lot when you're struggling with cues and you want to, like, why is this cue not working? I understand the mechanics of it. But I think the company that I work at, we have very much like an idea of just throwing ideas on the wall and then just seeing what sticks, like building tones and building sounds from there, and then finding like the best like ideas. But I feel like theory also helps because I work in a company with like 12 other composers, so it kind of helps to talk to people like that. That's where theory comes in the best. So like explaining what are you trying to do, or if someone needs to record over something you're doing, explaining the key or saying what the key is, and we can all pick up from there. In terms of like in relation to like film and in terms of like writing for cues, 100%, I think it'll definitely help, like in terms of like what Alex was saying, like referencing certain like modes or scales that can help you at least be the starting point to like what the mood of this cue would be. But yeah, in terms of like, I think for me, I initially was thinking that I needed to get my theory game up, and I still do. But I think just the idea of like time and the time constraints of like projects, you kind of like just end up just working constantly, and then like through just linear experience, you kind of like know what works with what. So you know like these palettes will work to make this mood that I'm trying to achieve, I think. So I think it's a combination of like music theory, but also what I've realized a lot of film and a lot of modern film scores is about like knowing what palettes, what colors to use, like what timbres to use, because that can almost save you. Like you don't really have to write the score progression. You can kind of just use these timbres and like it can kind of convey what the cue should be. So it's like it's like that type of like relationship. I feel like
I think theory allows you to sort of cut down the amount of time that the sort of creative process would take. If you're ever in a pinch, you can always rely on your theory to pull you out of it. So someone who might not have the theory, who is busy sort of trying to figure things out still, might take 3 days to do a given cue. Whereas someone who has all the theory would be able to do that same cue in half an hour to an hour, depending on the size of the cue. But,
definitely agree with that. Yeah, I think it's a combination of that and then just time. Like if you write enough romantic cues, you're able to knock out a romantic cue in half an hour. It's like that as well. Yeah, so I definitely agree with Alex.
Awesome. I want to ask, do you guys play a lot of instruments? Do you play? I mean, I think you just said you play guitar, Dustin, and Alex, I know, plays piano. Do you guys know any other instruments, or is it necessary to know a lot of instruments intimately, like playing them, or can you sort of just, with the new technology and the MIDI sounds, figure out the score on the computer?
So, I'm jumping straight into this one. Knowing how to play instruments, I think very commonly a lot of sort of these teenagers on their laptops will tell you, no, you don't have to learn an instrument.
You sound like a boomer, Alex.
I'll tell you.
Say, I already agree with Alex. I kind of know where Alex is going. I get the vibe.
I'll tell you straight up now, learning how music works is going to help your compositions like you wouldn't believe. Even if you can sit there and just click in the notes, knowing how to learn how to play the piano is going to help you with actually getting your notes in and making them feel more sort of realistic when they come across to the listener, because now you've got human errors in time. And then as far as it goes with learning a bunch of different instruments, I don't think it's necessary to learn how to play every single instrument well. But it's important to understand the boundaries of each instrument for orchestration. So I've dabbled in a couple of things. Piano is my main thing. I did piano in my music studies, but I can also do some very basic guitar playing, some very basic drumming, some very basic harmonica stuff, like a bunch of different things at a very basic level, just so I could get to know how the instrument works. So that when I do actually compose for that instrument, I'll understand what is the lowest note that this instrument can go to, what is the highest note, what do the notes sound like at this register, what do they sound like at that register, So it's important getting to know instruments and understanding what they are. And then as far as sort of musicality goes, master at least one instrument. Go and actually properly learn how to play at least one instrument, because that'll help your musicality like crazy.
Yeah, definitely agree with Alex. I mean, I feel like that's what kind of differentiates like the composers, like being able to, you can kind of write a piece of music, but all the subtleties, like the way a string swells, or like the the velocity and all those little nuances that give it realism is kind of what's going to set you apart, your compositions. And it's kind of like the thing is that it's not necessarily like the notes, it's the way the notes are being presented. And sometimes you're like, why does his compositions sound so, like, why does it feel so much different? It's like, it's the way he modulates and uses like the dynamics of these instruments to convey those notes. And that just comes from knowing what it sounds like. So knowing what a violin sounds like, you would know how to program a violin. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And knowing how the limitations of the violin, or the lack thereof sometimes. So 100% agree with Alex. Like, I think definitely mastering at least one instrument and then constantly listening to music so that you have this bank of references of like what these instruments sound like in the context of a hybrid score or like a more like classic like modernist composition, you know. So that's yeah, I definitely agree with that.
It reminds me of I was watching this video recently about what's his name? I think it's Ludwig Göransson.
Oh yeah, he did Black Panther.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
The Mandalorian
And he's also the Childish Gambino's
yes.
composer.
And
Yeah.
it was a video about him creating the score for The Mandalorian, and sitting in his studio, he just has sort of all of these like sort of random instruments that maybe he wouldn't even use for like an entire film or something, but he said that he was trying to figure out and was thinking about the score for The Mandalorian, and then he was sitting with like these like big recorders that he's got, and just like sitting and just like musing around, and then he just like played that theme, and then he was like, oh totally, that's what it is. So I think that's really cool. I think it's a different kind of consideration and more sort of maybe a more like organic one versus sort of clicking on files on a computer versus like picking this up and being like maybe this, maybe that, maybe that. As Dustin was saying, having like a sort of library of sounds and music that you know, but also just being able to have the fundamentals of an instrument, even if you're not like the best at it, to just like pick it up and maybe see what that sounds like. I think is a more organic process.
Yeah, and also something to be said about him is, I mean, I'm sure like most people in the world just play recorder in like grade 1 or 2 music class, and it always sounds horrible, and you don't think of a recorder as like something that can be used to make like something beautiful even. And then you listen to the Mandalorian score, and it's like the reason it works so well and it sounds so unique is that exact reason. People don't expect the recorder to be able to make those sounds.
All I'm gonna say here is you should go check out some recorder quartets. Just do it. Do it.
Send us a couple of links. We'll put those in the description. But yeah, no, like a recorder actually in the hands of somebody who can think outside of the box and who knows his craft, is any instrument can sound amazing.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, and also me, like hearing the Mandalorian score, you didn't actually realize like what was that sound. You're like, what is that? You know what I mean? It's like you wouldn't even think there was a recorder. Like, so yeah, it's just like what Mark was saying. Just having instruments because essentially like you can write a score, but then you need to find that one thing that makes it like unique or whatever. You know, like, and I think having live instruments and being able to maybe pluck them can really like give you a score some like life and that organic life that sometimes like it lacks in modern scores, I guess.
Yeah. Have you guys had the opportunity to have something that you've written be performed and recorded by like real people? You know what I mean? Not just on the computer.
I definitely have. I was very lucky when I was at AFTA. I managed to. I don't know if I was lucky or just very good at conning people. But I managed to convince 3 of my crews at AFTA to get together a bit of a budget towards hiring some musicians for, I think it was a 2-hour slot, just to record a string quartet for our graduation films, and then sort of layering that in with all the other kind of instruments that I played in myself on my keyboard. But it was definitely it was a very cool feeling to stand there and hear your music being played out live. I remember when I first heard them while they were busy warming up in the studio. I had literally spent the last 3 days working on this music, and I didn't recognize it at all. I just kind of I was watching them and listening to what they were playing, and I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. I wonder what song that is. And then I was actually chatting to Sean, and I think Sean even said, yeah, it could be like some Beethoven or Mozart or something, because they are from the Johannesburg, I think it was symphonic orchestra. And after like a couple of seconds, it clicked. It's like, oh, that's my music. Sean just compared my music to Mozart's Beethoven. So I was just like, dope.
Yeah.
That's cool. I would have made the same mistake regardless of whose music that was. It was really cool. They were really good players as well. And then apart from that, I think there have been times where I've been lucky and I've been able to put in like a real piano into scores. Being a pianist, being able to record the piano is it's a cool thing to do. But for me, sometimes it's not always possible. Microphones need to be around, and an in-tune piano is also a necessary thing. And then also, I think smaller things like guitarists, I try to either do it myself or source someone to do it for me. Bassists, whoever I got for guitar, if they have a bass, let them come and bring their bass guitar. It's basically like when it comes to these smaller things where it's so I want to say more common instruments like pianos, guitars, basses. It's easy to kind of source those kinds of musicians if you're in the right circles, you know. So sourcing those musicians is always going to be a beneficial thing. Just when there's a budget involved, sometimes it's not so practical, because then they want a cut of the money, and at the end of the day, you're only getting paid $50 for the petrol that it takes you to get to meetings. So yeah.
For me, yeah, that's the dream for me. No, I actually haven't had anyone play like any score I've written. But I have through like advertising, I have had people play over like my pitches and stuff like that. I think like in the ad space, we find that like that's like sometimes like the thing that can like beat you against, or that can be like the thing that sets you apart from your like competitors when you're pitching against with like other agencies. Like I remember at the beginning of the year, I did a pitch for an ad, and then we got like a live sax player to come and like play like saxophones, like just to like sell the hook that I was trying to like that I was programming a bit better. And then I know like we've also done like where we get like violinists in, and then the thing that we love to do with violinists is make them play like I don't know what it called, but they like shimmer on the actual like violins to make these really cool eerie like sounds. So I was writing a cue for a film, but it was like a tension cue, and then we needed like these like violin shimmers. So we got like violins to come and play like these like percussive elements of the violin, and then we would just use that. We would put it on our company server, and then anyone can grab it, and we would just like process it and make like cool sounds from it. Yeah. So that's kind of more like the sound design aspect of it, I guess. Sometimes when we record like musicians, but yeah, I haven't had anyone playing score I've written. Yeah, that's the dream. One day.
You said something I think very crucial with which is like setting yourself apart, and which is what I think Alex did when he. I don't think that you conned people into wanting to get a string quartet. It was this thing of you wanted to do this thing that you feel that you should get the experience doing, and it didn't fit in with like the way the post schedule worked, and which was like a ridiculous thing because everyone was saying like, oh, the schedule, but we were saying like, no, but this is an important thing. Why we must shift the schedule for this, not the other way around, because Alex should get the opportunity to record with like a string quartet, and it should become like a staple, you know. And I don't think it was something that had been done. All the lecturers were sort of like losing their minds around the schedule, but it came together and we got it done.
Let's move on to software. Software and maybe then hardware. We were just talking about, recording real instruments and stuff. But when you guys don't have that, or when you are playing around, what is your software of choice and why?
Do you have like an hour?
You've got 10 minutes. Go.
Software of choice for me has to be Cubase. Like I think Cubase is quite a stable when it comes to producing music for picture. Some of my favorite artists use Cubase, so of course I want to be close to those guys and feel like I'm having the same experience as them, even though I'm much lower down on the scales. I get to at least imagine that I'm them while doing my thing using Cubase. The fanboy side is part aside. Cubase is actually pretty good. For all of this, and I've used several different DAWs. I've used Studio One by Presonus. I've used Ableton. I've used Pro Tools. I've used Fruity Loops very briefly, but I've used it. And I don't know. It's something about Cubase is just sort of. It was a bit of a change to get into it. But once I got into it, I don't actually see myself going into any other DAWs. For those of you who may not know, DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. And then as far as other software goes, having sort of your own virtual instruments in your libraries are also very sort of necessary. And then I think at this point to go and list all of them, kind of like I could do that, but that's just going to waste time. I'm just going to mention by Spitfire Audio, which I've mentioned earlier on. There's sort of a line of free things that they offer called labs. Anyone who is getting into production music has to go check out Labs by Spitfire Audio. Brilliant stuff, and it's free. Like, do it.
Alex, can I ask a question? What's your favorite Spitfire library, like, of the selection? Like Albion 1 or Strings, like is there any like ones you like?
I actually like quite a lot of them. I recently bought BBC Symphony Orchestra.
How is that? I've seen it. Is that awesome?
It's really cool. I bought the core version, okay. the one that's like in the middle, because I don't have like 18,000 rand to spend on a sample library. But I bought the core version, and the core version is basically the most popular. I could be misrepresenting this, but I think it's the most popular mix of all the microphones used to take the recordings. But it's a mix by Jake Jackson, who mixes all their other plugins already anyway. So it's really cool. It sounds really good. Yeah.
I think for me, I'm pretty much on like in the same space as Alex. I've only been using Cubase for like a year now, and I love it. I mean, I think for composing to picture, I think it's amazing. And then for me, my other DAW is Ableton. I use Ableton a lot to get like for more sound design aspects, and also just like making stuff in my personal capacity. I tend to just use Ableton, and I work with people that use Ableton. So when I work with on those projects, I was just easiest to share sessions on Ableton. And I think the thing that Ableton really has I love a lot is its sampling ability. It does a lot of like granular synthesis that like how it can help you generate some really cool sounds. Especially when you want to like sample stuff and then like micro chop it up and then make synths from it. Like it's not the fact that it can do it, it's the fact that it takes like 3 minutes just to do it, or like maybe less than 3 minutes to like drop in a sample and chop it up and then you immediately have an instrument from it. So I think that's like its creativity possibilities is kind of what I lean towards. But in terms of like writing cues and writing score, I would not recommend Ableton at all. It's not really good to work with picture. I think Cubase is literally like the workflow, everything is just it's like a dream. It's nuts. It's kind of insane how they've managed to like it visually it just looks appealing. Like when you want to work to picture, it's like and like the way it lays out like the mixer and like the way it all like interacts with each other. It's really awesome. And then in terms of libraries, I agree with Alex. The Spitfire is really good. And then for me as well, Audio Emporia does really good stuff. I have a lot of their libraries as well, and they do really cool, like more modern score stuff. So a lot of like hybrid score stuff where you'll have like, it'll be like a string sample that's like slightly processed or something like that. It's kind of cool just to like have these like altered versions of like organic instruments just like at your fingertips, I think. So yeah, I think those are like my two.
I just want to like strongly agree with this, because Ableton is fantastic at anything sound designy. If you need to design a specific sound, I don't think I've used anything better than sort of Ableton's sort of process of actually even doing that. Yeah, I've got an Ableton push over here as well.
Nice.
On the hardware side of things. So I've used Ableton, but I still kind of prefer Cubase. I just wish that this worked in Cubase.
Yeah. I know that Cubase is taking a lot from Ableton. So they are taking like I know the sampler looks and the drum rack is very similar to Ableton's. But the only thing is like just setting up the macros. That's what I love about Ableton, is the fact you can take one pad, set a bunch of macros, and then copy it to all the pads, and then you have everything's there. So you don't have to like, it's like the admin of it is like what helps a lot, being able to like set parameters and then tell everything else that this is the parameters of that whatever, you know. So I think it's like a workflow thing, I think. But I think Cubase will get there. But I think yeah, I don't see myself changing from Cubase anytime soon. It's so awesome.
Okay, so can I ask, with these programs, right, what is your sort of workflow, your process when you start writing? Do you start with just a melody? Do you just choose an instrument and you just go, or do you start on your like physical instrument first, then you record it? What is your workflow using the software, and then adding and iterating and then until final delivery?
I think for me, sometimes I'll literally sit with the picture, and this is sometimes after I spot it. So sometimes I do my own personal spotting where Ableton has this thing where you can put markers, and then just like on the actual timeline, and then I'll put markers there, and then just to tell me what these like what I should be hitting or whatever. And then basically sometimes what I do is very like basic, but I'll just sit with my guitar and just play along and just try to find like a groove or something. And then from there, I map out like the BPM of that groove, and then I adjust the markers depending on what the BPM is. Because I do something that's not really advised, but I do a lot of tempo changing in when I do like long form like narrative pieces, which is like so I try to treat every cue like its own like thing, rather than having one BPM and then writing it in that space. So so having the ability just to sit with the guitar and then just stare at the picture and then just find like a melody that fits with like a certain amount of cues helps a lot. And then from there, it's just a lot of, from my part, I mean, it's a lot of experimentation, and then just trying to find what arrangement was best with what the cue needs, I guess.
How great is that? The sort of tempo stretching in Cubase. Like I can't tell you how many times that's actually saved me from something. Like you write something, you thought, yeah, I got the BPM for the scene totally. Like I've got this. Then you go and you write it, and then you get to the end of your cue, and you're like, I missed it. How did I miss it? Then you remember, oh yeah, I've got this function where I can just sort of slide things around and put them in place.
Yeah. Dude, it's nuts. Yeah. Dude, 100%.
Yeah.
Alex, what's your process?
I think the process has to be kind of like, it's different for each production to an extent. Like we said earlier, if you're getting a corporate thing where they've already got all of the sort of backing tracks and everything, or temp tracks in the video already, then you're kind of like, okay, cool. What is the thing that sticks out the most to me in this temp track, and how can I kind of take that main idea and turn it into my own? Instrumentation wise, I tend to go to a more piano kind of sound, just because I'm a pianist. I'm comfortable with the sound of the piano. But I will say, since I've started working with like more of a mapped out template for my work, I do tend to think, okay, cool, I've got this melody in mind. Maybe it'll sound cool on this instrument. And because I've got my template, I can just jump to that instrument straight away, try it out. If I don't like it, well, I can change the instrument quite easily with my template. I'm actually using, there's a template that Spitfire Audio released with sort of their BBC symphony stuff. And that I can't remember the guy who did it for Cubase. I think his name was Alex Watson. Really, really good template. If you've never seen a template, it does take some time to kind of figure out what's going on. But it took me a decent amount of time, admittedly, to kind of figure out what was going on. But having that template and then sort of incorporating the rest of my libraries into that template has sped up sort of my process of selecting instruments and getting through everything a lot faster. Yeah, and then there's also like if your piece is going to be more of an atmospheric piece, then I might not go straight to a piano sound. I might go more to something kind of like ambient, something synth wavy, you know, and then just using that to find inspiration to sort of fill in the rest of the textures that might be needed for the music.
Cool. Do you have another question?
Favorite composers or scores or something that stood out to you, role models, a score that made you want to write scores, that type of vibe?
All of them.
Every score ever.
All of them. I think there's something in every score that you can sort of learn from. So all of them. But to take the question a little bit more seriously, I think sort of favorite composers. I tend to sort of favor or lend my ear a little bit more towards sort of John Powell's music. I really like the whole Pixar vibe. It's quite busy as well, and I think it's like beautifully busy with a lot of the music that he does. John Powell and Junkie XL, I suppose. Also some really cool stuff. Very, very, very synthy. And I think he's fantastic for anyone who wants to sort of get to know more of the synth side of music from a classical perspective. Because he's also got like man's a genius. That's all I need to say.
Let's leave it.
There's like a lot of his hybrid scores. Like he's the best of his massive hybrid scores.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think for me, I've been getting into a lot of this guy called John Opstad. He's a British composer. He's relatively young, but he did a couple of episodes of the show called Black Mirror. I really loved. He did this episode called White Bear, and I really loved his process. He's like completely synthesizes, but it's all hardware. So there's no VSTs. So it's just him dialing in the tones. So he'll create a pulse with using like I think he uses one of these like Prophet synthesizers, and he just dials in like the textures that he wants. I thought that was really amazing. And he has like on his Twitter account, he like shows his Pro Tools sessions or his Logic sessions, and he shows you like different cues for all these shows that he's working on. And it's so fascinating to see like the limitations he sets. He intentionally sets these limitations for himself because he studied he's a classically trained like composer, but he sets these like weird limitations on himself to write these cues. And it's like I've learned so much from him, like in terms of what you can do with like making your palette just a little bit more smaller and like stretching your own creativity. And then I think my favorite composer is this guy called Raichi Sakamoto. He did The Revenant recently with this is a recent score, but he's a Japanese composer, and like his career trajectory is like one that I aspire to, because he started off in the 70s doing like synth pop music with this band called Yamamoto Orchestra, And then he did like in the 80s, he did like a whole bunch of crazy like classical compositions, and he did a lot of new age music. And then now he does like, he's like 70 years old now, and now he does like scores. He like does like a bunch of scores, but then he also does like music based on like, he does this thing called environmental music, which is like music based on like nature. So like sampling nature and stuff like it to like make weird like sounds. I love his trajectory because it's kind of like he's like falling into madness as he gets older, I guess. Like that's like the beauty of it. Yeah, those are like the two composers, I guess.
Awesome.
Really like enjoy like modern and like old, I guess.
One more question. How do you guys feel about stock music? Have you ever written stock music? What is sort of your idea around stock music and all these websites that are now popping up, allowing people to, for the YouTube channels, or even for some use it for films? You know what I mean? What do you guys think about stock music and this whole industry that's popping up?
I personally am not a huge fan of the stock music because it kind of takes away from sort of people going to musicians and saying, "Hey, I need this thing done. Can we get this thing done?" But at the same time, like it would be cool to be able to make money sort of passively like that, you know. I know we've brought up Spitfire Audio quite a lot in this, so bring it up once again. Christian Henson with Spitfire makes a lot of money with his library music because he's been doing it for so long. And as far as the whole career in library music goes, pretty much everywhere that I've sort of done my research on, at least, has kind of said, yeah, so well, for the first 3 years you're not going to get paid, and then sort of if you keep at it, eventually it builds up, and then eventually you start getting paid some money for it, and it becomes somewhat of a passive income, I believe, but you have to keep at it. So it's as far as sort of the library scene goes, I've considered doing some of it myself. I had an interview with someone where they're part of a South African-based music library, and their minimum requirements were 200 songs. And for someone who hadn't been thinking of doing library music, the thought of submitting 200 songs in like within a month even is a little like, yeah, that's a lot of music. So yeah, I think I'll probably work on that a little bit over time, but I don't think library music would be my sort of number one, let's go do this kind of thing, you know.
Okay. Yeah, I think with like Alex said, it probably works well with like temp music. I mean, yeah, it's just one of those things that I guess composers have to like, this is like a challenge to the industry. I think we just have to take it like, either we can like Alex was saying, either we can try and like adapt with it, so like maybe try and create library music, or we can just reject it. I mean, it's just another obstacle that just comes in the way. I mean, and I feel like library music serves its purpose. Like if you have a like an ad with a turnaround, or like a turnaround day of like 2 days, like sometimes like a library music option along with an original composition can like, it can work with the budget, but also it can like just give you like another option. And then I think for me, like in the ad space, we in the company that I work with, we do a lot of our sale pitches become library music. So we'll spend some time just your 40-second ad that failed, make it into 2 minutes, and we'll slap them in the library. And then we have contacts where we're on like a bunch of forums where people will be looking for certain cues, and then our project manager will just go through our survey and be like, oh, here's some failed pitches, and then we sometimes name the vibe of it, and then we'll just throw it out and see if it can make money. So there is a way. Sometimes there is a way to make money passively that doesn't mean you have to intentionally make stock music, which is like through cues that don't work, for things that you think aren't going to work. Sometimes I think the best bet will be to just develop it, get it to the best place possible, and then save it on your server. And you never know when you could actually be when it can come in use, you know, or when you can pitch it for something. So I think it's a very tricky question, because I mean it's something I've also looked into like myself, but I do realize that there's an element of churning. You have to kind of be able to churn music out really fast and at a certain quality. I think that's something that like comes with time. So yeah, I know it's a very interesting question. I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, from our side, we've used stock music, we've used music that Alex has composed for us, and it's just always so much better when there's somebody making music for the project. You know what I mean? Like, yes, you can find some really good stuff. You can find some really good stuff on these websites. Like, we use Artlist quite often, and there's some great stuff in there. But then when you compare it to things that have been written specifically for the project, you know, it's just uncomparable.
It's always like close to what you want.
Yeah.
It's like you search and you search to get as close as you can be, but you're never going to get on the money. The only way you can get exactly that is by getting someone who's directly composing to the actual picture. I mean, it just, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it like probably reflects more on your guys' ear. You guys probably have a very nuanced ear. You guys can feel when music feels like a stock music, you know. So sometimes you probably have directors or people that just like they can't hear the difference between a stock music and a like originally composed like piece, you know. So I think it speaks more to you guys. Like you guys have you guys have appreciation for scores, which benefits people like Alex and I in terms of like getting gigs and stuff like that. But I think most directors do. Like, I mean, the best directors, or the ones that aspire to be the best, at least, like have appreciation for actual music. So I think original music will always, as long as there's people with integrity, there'll always be people using like original music. But like I said, stock music, it serves its purpose. And if you have a turnover date, if you want that's like really short, stock music works perfectly, I think. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think it's also as far as the whole stock music thing goes, if you spend enough time watching YouTube videos, I think you'll have heard enough stock music to recognize quite a lot of it. I think especially I'll watch some YouTuber who's used sort of this song as their theme song, and then their theme song was stock music. So then you'll watch another completely unrelated sort of video where it's using that song as a theme going on in the video itself. I'm trying to think of
I've had that. It's always so weird. Yeah.
Trying to think of a good example. Let's say like someone who's doing I don't know, reviews on music equipment has this song as their theme song, and then you go to the next video where it's about a dude repairing a boat and it's using the same song in terms of boat repairs. So it kind of muddles things up, at least in my head, a little bit.
Yeah, we've had two experiences. You can talk about the one that I think you can talk about, but the one that I recently noticed is that we used this song for bloopers on one of the films, and now Film Riot is using that same song, but like for serious type videos, and I'm like, this makes no sense in my mind, because in my mind that's a blooper song, but now it's a serious song.
Yeah.
So
and it works in both contexts. Like neither is like wrong.
Yeah.
But it's just weird how the context of the actual thing changes the song itself. And also, a thing that happened with me recently is we used stock music for one of our shorts, Big Sip, and I was scrolling down Instagram, and then there was like some random like whiskey ad that had the exact same score. And then yesterday I was watching Filmmaker IQ videos, a YouTuber that we really like, and he's just using the song like as his like intro as well. And it makes me like the score used in the film less, not because it's a bad song and I really love those YouTubers and the song really works in their YouTube video, but like if it had been composed, it would have been the score for Big Sip.
Now it's just
it's that song on Artlist, which I love Artlist. I use it all the time, but I think that's another big pro for getting a composer is that's the score for that film. It makes it a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of like, imagine getting stock scripts, you know. Story.
True. And then you just see people making the same film over and over again. That's that's a good comparison. Okay, I think we've been going for quite a while, so let's wrap it up. So let's wrap it up with, what are some inspiring or just some words that you would have said to yourself before embarking on this career?
Yeah, I feel like for me, the thing that helped me a lot was I don't know if this sounds bad to say, but like turning it into some sort of like a blue collar job. So like putting in the work, I feel like. So sometimes like there's this artistic side to composition, which is awesome. But I feel like the thing that helped me a lot was just not thinking about making music all the time, just making music all the time. I think that's the best advice. Just make music every day and like make music at 110% and then be willing to scrap it and then do it again the next week. You know what I mean? I think that's probably like the best advice I can probably give. Yeah.
I think for me it would be a similar thing. Just keep practicing. Everything you do in music needs to be practiced. Composing needs to be practiced. Playing instruments needs to be practiced. So the knowledge that you sort of have for music also needs to be practiced. And do it in little steps. You know, you don't have to sit there for unbelievable amounts of time every single day, because that's going to discourage you from doing it. Just tell yourself 5 minutes a day, and who knows, in the next couple of weeks, those 5 minutes a day might just become 10 minutes. Then 10 minutes becomes an hour. Then an hour becomes 2 hours. And before you know it, you don't even have to think about practicing anymore. It just happens.
Awesome. That's very cool.
Cool. So thanks so much for joining us. That conversation was brilliant. Thank you for all of your insights. And yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. And we'll see you next time. Bye. And that's it for our conversation about music composing and film scoring. Thank you so much, Alex and Dustin, for your conversation. It was so good and so informative. And thank you for listening. So if you did like it, remember to smash that like button and doing all the other things that the YouTubers always tell you to do.
Like also hitting that subscribe button that's right down there. And while you're there, you might as well hit the notification bell. You'll be notified of all the videos that we put out as soon as we put them out unto the world, unto you, the audience.
Which is every Tuesday and every Friday.
With a new short film on the first Friday of every month.
So until next time, go out there, stay safe, and make your movie.